Last summer, our sons came home, and they told us, they said, we're allowed to go into the clubhouse and buy food, but we have to wait outside to get our food. And so as a mom, I immediately thought, racism, segregation, and my husband and I, we were mad, we were so angry. And then I said, we already live in a world of a lot of racial tension. How am I going to raise my boys so that they're able to navigate these challenges? And so we have 4 kids. We have 1 princess, but I have 3 sons, and they are not Trayvon Martin. They're not Eric Garner, and they're not Michael Brown. But as a mom, deep inside, I feel like my sons will face similar challenges. And so after watching hours and hours of protest footage as a result of the grand jury decisions in New York and Missouri, I asked myself a really poignant question, and I said, Self, why is it that every time there's a serious societal issue that we have to inject race? And then the more I watched the footage and the more I thought about it, it came to me that it's not just about injecting race, it's about injecting gender and sexuality and religion. And we have to get to a point where we can have these conversations without injecting those things. And so I had a really great conversation with somebody that I like to call my friend. She's one of my co-pastors. And she said to me, you know what, I'll never have to fear as a mother like you will for your sons. And I believe it's time for all of us to start thinking about that and do something differently. And some of you may think it's conjecture, and maybe it is. But one thing that I know that isn't is the fact that collectively, we can begin to change the way we deal with these social issues. We can begin to change the way we look at the world. And so I want you to go on a journey with me to understand something that I like to call the spirit of collective human attention from the inside out. And so I have 3 tools that I want to share with you. And these 3 tools, trust me, they're already in your toolbox, they're already in your arsenal, but go on this journey with me so we can expand those 3 things. The first one is love. I bet you everybody here just automatically thought about the person they love the most. But listen to this story. Imagine you are a teenage girl and you know you're different. And so you get to the point where you get brave enough to share this difference with your family. So you tell your parents, I'm gay. And you're met with such sadness, even disappointment, probably a little bit of shame too. And so you graduate from high school and you say, you know what, I'm going to call my really cool aunt and uncle, and I'm going to ask them if I can come and live with them. And from the time your uncle picked you up to the time you left, things were different. You know why they were different? It's because your aunt and uncle gave you unconditional love. This is a story about my niece. Now, I can tell you from the bottom of my heart that I know my brother-in-law and my sister love all of their kids to the end of the earth, and they will go to the end of the earth because they've done it for me. But at that very moment where my niece shared that deep, deep secret, that elephant in the room, something happened to that love. And that's my point. Oftentimes, we are ready to love on a condition connected to the situation instead of loving unconditionally through the situation. And so that's what I want to challenge you to do in terms of that first tool, is look at how you love. And even through the toughest of times, try to love unconditionally. And so my second tool, and I think that we probably already do this as human beings who do have that spirit of love, is to stop the judgment. Oftentimes, it's hard, and I think our MC said it best. You look at people and you judge. I have this nice body art. My husband would call it something different. But I used to dermablend myself to death to cover up my tattoo. And I have a cute one on my back, too. And I have one here, and I have one on my ankle. But I used to always cover up the tattoos because I used to feel like people are going to judge me because I had tattoos. And you know what? I stopped doing it because dermablend is expensive. And number 2, because I wanted people to get to know me from the inside out. Because I think I'm a really cool nerd mom, passionate researcher, writer, and lover of a lot of great things, and lover of people. And so I think that's something we have to do in terms of our judgment. Stop for a minute and center yourself and let yourself learn about people from the inside out. So let me throw out some scenarios for you. None of us in here have ever traveled out of this great state. So do you know how it feels to be a foreign exchange student who comes to this country alone, seeking an education? You probably don't. None of us are senior citizens for the moment, because some of you may be our stellar seniors. But do you know how it would feel to have to split a 30-day supply of heart medication over 60 days because you can't afford your prescription? No, you don't. And none of us have kids, let alone live in this world as a single parent. So do you know the pain to have to depend on public assistance to take care of your children, provide food and shelter and clothing? And you and I, we can go to our synagogues, our mosques, our churches, and we can practice our religion freely, free from persecution. So we probably don't know how it feels to be persecuted. But oftentimes when these and other social situations are presented to us, these are the judgmental things or the discourse that we engage in. Oh, look at those exchange students coming here taking all of our financial resources. It's so unfair. Or look at that single mother, another one abusing the system. And poor senior, they just didn't save enough money for their 401k. And religion, not touching that. I was always taught not to talk about religion or politics. And some of these things are just met with such frustration, and we have to begin to change the way we look at people. Again, we want people to look at us from the inside out. Let's look at others from the inside out. And oftentimes, when people are in these tough situations, there are roadblocks that are in their way that they have no control over. And so I think as we move toward this spirit of collective humanism, we have to really look at each one of us taking an opportunity to address and solve the problems. And it's not going to be easy because we live in a very individualistic society. We're all about ourself, selfie, self-centered, whatever you want to call it. But we need to be more collective in terms of how we address these social ills. Sociologist Howard Wynett says one of the biggest threats to our democracy and just civilization at large is our ability to protect human rights and to give our time and effort to the human condition. And so a lot of times, we really don't understand what other people are walking through because we just have on our own set of glasses. A lot of these social issues are also magnified in the media, and we get angry because of what we see. And oftentimes that helps to make solving problems more problematic. But one thing that I want you to realize about all of these social ills and all of these isms is that they're not based on black and white. They're based on the social value that we place on other people. And so in the process of changing, I have to go back to my narrative in the beginning. Could I have addressed that situation with my sons in a different way? Could I have empowered them to see the situation differently and quite possibly come up with a solution to the problem? Because you see, the problem was that the teenage crowd was paying with money from their piggy banks, making it hard for the cashiers to process payments and not leaving sufficient tips. So that was the issue. It wasn't a black and white issue. But as a mother, when my black kids are turned away, that's the first place I go. Because as a black woman, that's how I code things. And so I read a really interesting article about black children that are born and raised in white adoptive families. And what stuck out to me in that article was the fact that those parents are able to teach their kids to navigate both black space and white space effectively. They're teaching their children to care about humans, not to throw all those other things aside, but to embrace those other things, to embrace the differences, ask questions about them, be open to understanding those differences. And I think if children can do it, we as adults can do it too. And so I listened to a talk by Melanie Hobson. She did a TED Talk last year. And one of the concepts that she shared with her audience was the concept of being color brave and not being colorblind, because I don't want anyone to be color or gender or sexuality or religiously blind, but I want you to be brave in how you approach those things. So we can stretch Melanie's concept here to include being color brave, gender brave, sexuality brave, religiously and spiritually brave, and yes, culturally brave. Because you see, collective human attention is about being brave and sometimes standing on your own to be a different person. The last tool in my toolbox is the tool of being able to de-escalate tense situations. A few years ago, I was in a store. I'm a consignment junkie. I was in a store, and I reached over a rack, and I hit a patron, and she looked at me, and her response was, "You stupid N-word." And I immediately stopped. Man, I wanted to make up four-letter words that I could hurl at her. I wanted to give her the tongue lashing of her life. But in that moment, I stopped. And I asked myself, you know what? How many times has she heard that word, and in what context? Not just said out of the mouths of white people, but out of the mouths of people that look just like me. And so I said to her in my professor voice, I was going to say, excuse me, but let me offer you this. Had I been a different woman, a different mom, this situation would have escalated, gotten real ugly. And so I ask you, the next time you're in a situation like this, not to use that word because it's toxic. Think about the words that have been said to you that are toxic. And so I made my way around the store to finish consigning and trying to compose myself. And I was listening to other customers, and they were like, wow, I would have never been able to do that. I wouldn't have done that. I can't believe she said that. But I noticed a change. People began to think about how they would respond or how they responded in the past when that word was used to them. And that's what I'm looking for, is us to begin to change the way we think about human beings, because that's what we are. Regardless of the things you see outside, there's something inside that make us unique, that make us worthy of respect and love and that collective human attention. And so I want you to look around the room. Look to your left, look to your right, look behind you, look up at the camera people, the crew. Everyone in this room has an amazing narrative. Everyone in this room has a story worthy of sharing, worthy of being listened to, worthy of asking questions about, and taking a moment to really be sincere in your engagement with that person. It's time for all of us to put forth the best intentions and realize whether they're small or whether they're grand intentions, we can all make a difference. So I'm challenging you as you go back to your places of work and worship and all the volunteer things you probably do in your great communities. I want you to be swift to love. I want you to be slow to judge. And when you can, be quick to de-escalate. Take this spirit of collective human attention with you. Give people the opportunity to know you from the inside out. And do your part to uplift humankind. Embrace the spirit of collective human attention. Make those differences for everyone.